I'd like to bring up on stage John Mitton, who is VP AV and CTO at Red Thread. John. Bob Bavolacco, who's the director. I'm sorry, I have to turn the page, Bob. Who's the director of the Technology Partner Program at Crestron. Thank you. Nathan Glotfelty, who's the Senior Director of Corporate Development and Alliances at QSC. Thank you for joining us. Rodrigo Canas, who is the Head of Business and co-founder of WSS. Thank you, Rodrigo. Thank you. And also Joseph Mendonca, who is the Director of Business Development and at AVI-SPL. I think we've heard of this company.
I think so too. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us. Max, you stay here with me. This is our illustrious panel. We have a lot of executive experience here on stage for you. We wanted to focus in on AI and the power of AI in smart buildings, AV, and workplace technology. And we have some questions, and hopefully you'll join in with the questions. Again, it's all a question of time here on our stage. But we'd like to start with a general overview. What role does AI currently play in smart building performance, in smart building platforms and workplaces, and how do you see it evolving in the next 1 to 3 years? Now, I think I'd like to start with Joe.
Sure. So AI it plays a crucial role into these technologies, helping us to optimize efficiencies, sustainability, security, and the user experience. There's no questions that this technology will continue to evolve for the next couple of years. Just to kind of give you an interesting perspective, so the last paradigm shift in our industry was really the development of the internet. And the development of the internet, there was actually 17% of the global engineering community was actually working and developing the internet. Today we have 73% of the global engineering community working on AI. So we can expect a very rapid development in AI. We look at AI, or we look at the smart building technology in 2 levels. First, on the micro level, which is all of the devices that we implement across an organization. Those are all of the IoT devices, sensors, access points, collaboration equipment, and other equipment. And that equipment is all kind of getting smarter, and we're implementing implementing a lot of AI into those devices. And then on the macro level, we have a lot of development going on, adding AI into the management systems, and that could both building management systems, IWMS systems, booking systems, analytical platforms like Metricas, who spoke earlier. There's a lot of AI kind of going into that. The challenge that we see from an integration standpoint is really the integration and the interoperability of all of this technology and making it functional so that it all works as one holistic solution. And that's going to be what's going to define just how successful you are in kind of building that optimized workplace.
Well, thank you very much, Joe. Rodrigo.
Yeah, so in my opinion, I think nowadays we already see a lot of interaction with the building between the sensors that are installed and the communication and predictive maintenance. So that's certainly one of the main points. Then, of course, space utilization and space occupancy is really important for the companies to try to figure out exactly how they want to work and what's the path. And then, of course, the workplace personalization. So having the idea of a certain person that needs to work in a certain moment in a certain environment, and having AI collecting all of this data to allow us to have a better workflow in the building. That's definitely the main topics I would like to stand out. Of course, within the next 1 to 3 years, and this is more to the companies that already started adapting and using these sensors, we're gonna be able to see the next shift between the communication of the people and the building itself. So there's gonna be more the action of the data that was mentioned here previously by by metricus. And as a strategy designer and architects, we also think that AI is gonna bring a ton of value when creating new options of layouts and using machine learning to start using that design and fit out. It would be definitely something to look out for.
Thank you, Rodrigo. Let's also talk about what are the most promising AI-driven technologies or innovations shaping workplace experience, efficiency, and collaboration. Nathan, I'm going to move right down to you.
Sure, thank you. I think it's hard to answer that question without saying the words generative AI or agentic AI. I think these are the two that are shaping most of it. What we just saw from Spaceti is, really amazing from a generative AI perspective, where anybody can now go and query that data and get results. It's not something that takes weeks or months to do. And I think as we look from task-oriented solutions like generative AI, where we ask it to do a task and it does that, and we can transition to goal-oriented AI, things like agentic AI, it's going to be really exciting to see the possibilities there.
Thank you. And maybe, John, you can add to that?
Sure. I think the most exciting area is actually the impact AI can have on the way people work and the personalization. Our company is a workplace solutions provider. We integrate technology, people, and spaces together. A lot of the conversation today has been about the whole building, obviously a smart building conference, but really it's about the experience that you can create for that person in the room. And the ability of AI will do, now that you're able to connect biometrics information, voice, facial recognition, to understand how I, as a person coming in to make sure that we're having productive meetings, the system is set up to make us, to create the maximum result for the organization. And that's working with a lot of other industries. It's interesting about the AV industry. We have always been an industry that's worked with multiple different disparate systems. And I think there's no one better positioned to help pull this all together than the AV integrator. And that's kind of, I know that a lot of people that have had experiences with AV systems would probably say no, never. But that is fundamentally what we do. And that's what I've heard today constantly is how to pull all these different systems together to create a great customer experience.
Rodrigo, do you have something to add?
Yeah, so what I would add here is perhaps the assistant. So we're gonna see, as Nathan said, the agent assistants, they're gonna play definitely a big role onto that. And as to what was mentioned previously, also the experience is actually really, really important. So what we want to make sure, or what the companies want to make sure as a strategy, is not that people are coming 3 or 5 times a day to a week to the office, but rather that Rodrigo is able to be with Max for a certain purpose and use the office for a certain aspect. So we're going to see the planning of the people and the interaction with the building be much more seamless and more intuitive, and that's basically it.
More intuitive than ever before.
Just to add to that, I mean, great point. So it's not going to be available just for the building managers or workplace manager or the industry specialist. We believe that the workplace AI is going to come to the hands of every employee, right? So you will be able to do agentic level of tasks, such as, booking your desk, room, parking ahead based on the synchronization with your calendar. You're going to be able to kind of understand where, depending on the type of teamwork you're doing, where you should be better placed, which floor, next to what type of, people. So I believe that this is exactly, the democratization of the AI that is coming to our industry today.
And following along with that, how can AI improve space and energy efficiency and operational management in smart buildings? And that sounds like a Crestron question for me, Bob. What do you think?
Well, first question is, how many people are going to dream about the word data for the next 2 weeks? I mean, right? Without data, you don't have AI. But I want to go a little bit micro with this answer. Take a conference room, for example, in an organization. There's a lot of devices in these rooms. You could have a room scheduling panel on the outside. You could have a UC solution on the inside, whether it be a Zoom solution, a Team solution, aux sensors. You have displays in the room. As an IT administrator or an AV planner, I would like to know a lot of information about that room. For example, is it a room for 10 people being booked by 2 people all the time, right? So there's a space utilization question I could solve for. Is the room being conducive to the amount of people that are booking it, right? I can enforce policies then once I drive that data. If the same 2 people are booking a room for 10 people, I don't need a room for 10 people, right? Or I can probably implement some policies that prevent that room from being reserved unless the room count was, say, beyond a certain threshold. You have occupancy sensors in there, right? How many people are in the meeting room, right? If it's a people counter, again, I know how many people are in the room, but I also know when the person entered and when the person exited, right? Now I could free the room up, right, and not utilize the room for an hour. With that data, I could also then tell the building environmental systems to throttle down the AC or bring up the AC, right? So the devices, and so some of the panelists had mentioned this word before, edge AI. With the right devices in the room and the right data collected, you could build large language models that can help you data mine those different parameters, if you will, so you can get better optimization out of your room. So again, we're not trying to boil the ocean, and from a Crestron perspective, we're just scratching the surface with AI. You know, from a portfolio perspective, we have our One Beyond and our Automate VX solution, which is AI camera technology and speaker tracking. But mining the data that's coming from all of these in-room peripherals is just something we're starting to scratch the surface on. But you got to build the right language models, and that's pretty much how you drive optimization of a room, is looking at all the different parameters that the devices are collecting.
And Bob, just to continue on, because you know, when you're talking about that with the AI innovation, what about the concerns for data privacy and security? How do you balance them?
So the speaker before was talking about edge AI.
Yeah.
So, you know, AI is in the cloud, right? And a lot of organizations, including ours, we have concerns about what's being thrown up in the cloud, especially when you're using things like ChatGPT, right? And you're throwing roadmaps and you're trying to plan your technology strategies. All that's up for grabs in the web. An edge AI server brings that down within your company's firewall, right? So now you have better management of what you're asking AI to do, right? Edge AI is reactions based, right? And so if it sits within your firewall, even though it's going out to the cloud, all your devices are cloud connected, you have some layer of security. The other thing I would suggest is look for things like open APIs, right? So that the devices are talking through an open network. You don't want to lock yourself into a device type that's running a certain platform or a certain OS or isn't readily standardized out in the industry, because that can kind of limit what you do with that types of data. So when you look at an open ecosystem, things that are widely available, you bring your AI strategy in your organization within your IT through an edge server. Now you got better confines on your security.
Just to add one point on that, you know, it's important, and a lot of our clients ask Spaceti, you know, how do you manage the data security? So one of the things that we've done, we've actually isolated the workplace data and we trained it within kind of enclosed sandbox environment. And each client is actually getting their own version of the Spaceti AI. So it's not like it's, you know, training, you know, another model out there. No, it's actually enclosed. It was much more difficult to do, and we've tried many different things at first, right? But when we realized that for large enterprise clients, you know, corporates, it's going to be super crucial and important to have the data security and privacy and not to cross-pollinate and kind of for other organizations. We see it a lot of in banking sectors, you know, in healthcare, that this is a must. And, you know, it's really about the level of the architecture that you have to build the AI, but also, you know, an ability to have an open APIs to be able to interconnect with systems like Crestron, QSys, you know, and many more in place.
Yeah, there's a lot of third-party devices out there. You always want to look for a full-stack vendor, because then you know their devices have been proven to communicate with each other. But that's not always the case, right? You're going to get clients who are going to have a plethora of different device types. And so as an AV or an IT administrator, you want to be asking those questions, like, are you open standard? Do you have open APIs? Can the devices talk across my infrastructure so I can collect all that data? The last thing you want to do is have a bunch of edge devices that are just hitting roadblocks, and now you're missing all those key data points.
Joe, I just want to ask you again for data privacy and security.
Sure, absolutely. So it's, for organizations, this is critical to being able to earn their customers and their and their employees' trust, right? And very often, it even to mitigate risk around, could be either financial, legal, or even reputation, right? You really have to have a policy. And this is a sensitive topic for every one of our customers, because so ultimately, AI kind of becomes a little bit of an unknown, specifically for people across an organization. Therefore, they have internal processes and legal processes in order to enable any type of AI associated with any system. So it becomes a big issue. I always recommend to our customers that there's always 5 things I would recommend. First, you need a robust, data security policy. You need transparency and consent, because people want to know why you're gathering that data, why you're analyzing that data, and it's important to continue to educate. And then build an AI ethical guideline, right? Because if you have that, then you have a roadmap, you know how to follow. So those are all the things we recommend in order to ensure that you can manage and control how AI gets utilized within an organization.
Thank you. And we kind of got there, but we're at the point where we should be talking about interoperability, and how we leverage it across different platforms and how organizations are addressing this. And I'm going to zero in on you, Nathan.
All right, yeah. I love this question. It's also maybe the scariest of all of them. For us to realize our shared vision around smart buildings interoperability is absolutely key. And I get the pleasure to sit in a partner role, and I feel like sometimes in a partner role you have to be a hopeless romantic. If we could just figure this out together, it's going to be amazing next time. But you see that potential for what interoperability could look like. And where I see the projects start to fall apart or where things fail is when we get into the moment of trying to build a one-off solution. Each of these buildings are like snowflakes. They're prototypes of one. It's maybe the first and only time that building will be built that way. And we're trying to find ways to scale solutions through interoperability. But it's really hard. And I think it's at this moment where we can look at leveraging AI to push some of that burden over there and have agents talking to agents and move past the world of just APIs. So I think interoperability is absolutely key. I'm really excited for it. It's also probably the scariest part of it all, too.
If I could echo just what Nathan said, it's like, you don't want to try to boil the ocean here. You want to look at it like a pond, right? I personally, like a Venn diagram is a great example. What is your end objective, right? Bite-sized chunks before you try to take on way too much. And then from that, with the right models, they can kind of interplug in, right? You broaden your scope as you accomplish those individual Venn objectives, if you will. But it's a beast, right?
You have to start somewhere.
Yeah, you can go down a rabbit hole and find out that you're providing data that just isn't relevant, right? The Mark Twain garbage in thing.
Okay. And in terms of advancements in AI specifically impacting, the ISE crowd here, let's just say, and the opportunities that this might create for end users and integrators. Nathan, you want to address that?
Yeah, I mean, for us at QSys, AI is revolutionizing the way we think about almost everything, from development to customer service across the board. It's been, really an amazing shift for us. And I was talking to our CTO the other day, and he described how, he took 2 development teams, told one of them to solve it in an algorithmic way like we had in the past, and another one with AI, who do you think was going to win? Right, and so I think this shift from algorithmic type thinking and algorithmic type solving of problems to AI type solving is really amazing. And we see that today already in the UC platforms. I work from home, I have a family. That means there's lots of noises that happen in the background, but through audio AI, a lot of that gets pulled out. I don't think many people would know that they're there unless the boss, my 5-year-old daughter, comes in and waves. They wouldn't see. So I think we're already experiencing that in a few places, and just really excited for what comes next.
Every time you mention, CPO, I keep thinking of the little guy robot. John, would you like to jump in on this in terms of the advancements in AI impacting the industry?
Yeah, if you walk the floor, you'll see some phenomenal technology. Things that we used to spend hours and hours addressing, like on audio. The things that we can do now in audio and improving the experience for the people in the room and for the remote are crazy. There used to be that there were some rooms we could never get the audio correct. Now with AI, you turn it on, you work with it, and you're 99% there, and there's always a human element at the end. Multi-camera is important. You know, it was great when we all think about 5 years ago, no one really had Zoom, no one really had Teams. And then the expectation came, okay, now I can connect, but I want to see everyone at one time. Or I want to see better views for people that are in the room. And now the expectation is that if I'm remote, I want the same experience as if I'm sitting in the room. And the person that's in the room wants to be able to make sure they can collaborate and experience with the people on the far end. So the technology, one beyond, Hadley just announced a Numbly multi-camera solution. There are unbelievable technologies, which is all about creating the experience that the end users need to excel.
Experience being the key word here for this crowd.
Yes.
So I'm going to ask one last question before I open it up for audience questions, but I'd like to just drill in on a future vision and say, what emerging AI technologies or trends are you most excited about in the context of smart buildings and workplace innovation? Rodrigo.
Yeah, so definitely the large action models is something that we definitely have to look out for. So the same way that now we can manage all of the information and data through large language models, I think then we want to interact with the building and really make it cohesive. And that's perhaps my biggest point. And then self-adjusting buildings, self-adjusting workplaces that are going to be able to learn with all of the historic data from AI and then create responses or solutions that are able to improve the day-to-day in the office space.
Okay, thank you, Rodrigo. Nathan.
Yeah, I mean, I think AI is acting as a great connector, right, of the data. We talked about interoperability, but also of functions in a business. I look at, you know, this panel and what's represented here. It's not just building management systems. I mean, we're talking about workplace as a whole, and I think that that's possible because of AI. So I'm really encouraged by that, about how accessible AI is making the data. I worked with a lot of great workplace designers in the contract furniture world, but they were not comfortable, you know, running reports in Tableau. They don't have to anymore. We can now just ask questions. So I'm excited to see what comes from that. I also think, to your point of, you know, forward correcting and the ability to do some simulations over top of all of the data, that's kind of been one of the missing pieces. So encouraged for that. I think that's going to help us have, you know, smarter, safer, greener buildings.
So from this meeting, we're going to go to the lunch, which is also sponsored by Spaceti. So I have his permission to just have a couple audience questions before we do that. So I'd like to open it up to the audience now for this distinguished panel. If you have any questions you'd like to ask. Sir, if we could have a microphone and if you could tell us your name and company first. Here it comes.
Hi. Hello. Ian Mason from Fancy.
Microphone.
Hello. Ian Mason, Fancy. What might go wrong?
Who wants to take that?
I'm sorry?
Say again?
What might go wrong?
What will go wrong?
What might go wrong?
What might go wrong? What will go wrong?
I mean, I can answer that, right? I mean, it could be that AI becomes way too powerful, right? And we do not set the right limits, you know, in our control with the emergence of general, you know, intelligence or AGI, the so-called, right? And if we, as human beings, right, not just, you know, the building industry, don't make sure that we have the safety nets of how the different infrastructure that can be changed, like, for example, you know, locking up the HVAC, right, so you don't have the air inflow. Oh my God, this is a horrendous scenario, right? But so how do we make sure that there are those, you know, safety nets that AI is not going to be able to think that, hey, it's better for, you know, for a certain outcome that AI believes at a certain time down the line, and we don't know if it's going to be, you know, 3 years, 5 years. I think it's going to be sooner than later. Yeah, but it's just making sure that we have a mechanism, you know, within our hands to be able to kind of harness the power of AI, but also just be nice to it, right? It helps.
I'm going to actually echo what Max says. Crestron is in a lot of markets: marine, residential, corporate, enterprise, smart homes, obviously. AI is AI learns, obviously. It learns from the data it's pulling from. So think of it as once it starts sucking in data, it's going to start making predictive analytics. You got to have the right checks and balances. Somebody has to be looking at that, whether it's a product planner or an an analyst, to say, oh, this is going pretty deep. It's starting to think that if this condition, this if then that then what scenario, it'll start implementing actions. Again, that reaction-based edge AI stuff. So you kind of got to know where it's going. Is it learning too fast? Is it because, again, it's saying, I got these 4 or 5 or 500 data points, so I'm just going to predict this is what should happen. And that's not, I don't think, where we're at yet. I think the industry as a whole is still learning it. There's some fear. And I think it's, again, I go back to this then thing. It's you really got to look at it in small chunks and then let it evolve as you can control it. Otherwise, I think it can get out of hand.
Yeah, just maybe to add one more thought to
Yeah.
that, Bob, I think there's a couple things that stick out to me that could go wrong. One is we forget about the people that are using it, right? It has to make sense for the people who are using it on a day-to-day basis and not just for, some wizard up in the cloud that's making decisions for us. So we can't forget that. To echo your point, it's garbage in, garbage out. Bad data in, bad results coming out the other
Right.
side. So clean and good data from that perspective. And I would encourage everybody to come check out our booths. And I imagine most of us were freaking out this morning because things weren't working, right? Because it's a trade show. So I think that's just a part of it too. Is getting comfortable with technology and making sure we've got good quality data in.
Right.
I would mention, Joe had mentioned transparency,
Yeah.
and that's real important. We've had an example where we worked with a customer, did not want to tell his end users what was going on, why we were putting occupancies in, and it was to benefit them to create a better experience, but they were afraid of the people going and revolting about personal information being identified out, and it was a failure, complete failure. And so part of this is a change in management and getting people on board to understand what the goals are and being transparent and explaining to them and let them be part of the process. If we're going to ask them to go ahead and register their voice or their biometrics into the cloud so that we can prepare experience, it's important that they understand why. We're not here to track your day-to-day keystrokes of that. And that's the immediate reaction. AI is going to come back and report that I'm not working correctly, and it's going to be used against me some point in the future. So it is an element. Yeah, go ahead, Joe.
And to add to what's being said, it's what can go wrong is you really need to pace yourself, right? You got to take small steps. You got to make sure there's always business objectives driving why you're implementing technology. I meet a lot of people, they fall in love with the technology, they get super excited about all the features and all that it can do, and then they jump into it, right? But you really need to kind of let the business drivers dictate what you implement, and you need to pace yourself. If you do that, you always keep it manageable, you always keep it under control. It's when you try to run faster that you can kind of you're able to control.
Questions from the audience?
Simon Wilcock, AstraZeneca.
Okay.
As we move into an agentic world, we've already done AI. We're moving into agentic, so by the end of the year, we'll have a good chunk of agentic systems in place and running. How will you see suppliers starting to integrate into that world? What are the challenges that you're going to have? And what is it that we're going to be looking at in a year's time, which will really show that we can use SaaS to make a difference in this agentic world?
Thank you. Who would like to grab that from the panel? Nathan?
Yeah, I'll just say something quickly about it. As I was preparing for this panel, I thought about what's changing in the world of partnerships, and this idea of agentic alliances came to mind. Where who are the companies and who are the systems, or what are the systems that at QSYS we feel like we need to have a relationship with? Maybe today it's at an API level, but could we go agent to agent? Going forward, this is things that could happen in the future. We're not there today, but I think we have to consider who's going to be in that stable of partners for us, and what are the outcomes that our customers are really going to want to see there. So we'd want to explore that with our customers, of course.
Just to add to that, I believe that it's about embracing it, and totally agree with Nathan that you need to form an alliance. And this is a great example that here on the panel today we have an alliance of partners. All of you are partners of Spaceti. We would love you guys to be a partner of that ecosystem as well. And we believe that together we can achieve much more, right? Either from the technology integration perspective, or just going to the market with clients together. And what we've seen coming up from the Spaces perspective, that integration with some of the existing systems that are in place, and then doing that agentic automation on top, and giving that power to the user in their in an app, in a web interface, whichever interface they would love to interact with. You have to come to the client, right, and help serve the needs of the employees to make them more productive, more efficient, while also thinking about how to make that space efficient and not spend a ton of money on it. That, I think, is an important outcome from an ROI perspective as well.
On the topic of space utilization, I'll just say, if you're not going to visit Crestron to learn about AI, definitely stop by. We have Spaceti on display all week in our desk and room scheduling section of our booth. So happy to bring this partnership to market together. So thank you.
Time for one last question. Anyone? All right. With the two people that asked questions, is there someone back there?
Back in the...
Way back there. Okay.
Back there.
Here comes the microphone. Sir, if you state your name and company.
Thank you. Alexandro Karatas from MP Corporate Finance. We're an M&A advisor in Europe. I was curious in understanding how you would actually bridge this difference in regulations, because AI is regulated differently, and I'm looking at Europe and United States, right? And I know most of the innovation comes from the United States, but you have a lot also in Europe, which is mainly driven by regulation. So I'm curious how you're going to bridge that.
It's a tough one, so I can go a first step at it. So I believe that regulation is enclosed in one, where you store the data and what level of access to the data, especially of your personally identifiable data or any sort of corporate confidential data you're managing, right? So you have to separate on the very granular level what that system, and we're talking about any AI, not just related to smart buildings or workplaces, has access to, in order to make sure that you comply with each local regulation. And there is actually a standard that is coming up for ISO AI certification. That's going to be an international one. We are now following that standard that helps you to get those guidelines to be able to be compliant.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Just to add to that, I mean, so as you may already know, so AVI-SPL, we have offices in most countries, and we have lots of offices across Europe. And one of the reasons to why we do that is because it's really important that those offices are completely knowledgeable about the policies and governance of those environments, in order to ensure that we can comply to whatever the local policies are.
Thank you. I'd like to invite the three gentlemen who asked questions. You're going to receive a free copy of Matthew Marston's Smart Building Advantage, signed by the author himself. And Max, you have a surprise for me here. What is this?
Yes. So actually, please go ahead. This is for you and each panelist. This is an invitation to visit our Prague HQ offices. This is some fantastic chocolate.
Czech Republic chocolate.
And with that in mind, I just wanted to, if you could do like a quick group photo just for the camera, for memories, with the Smart Building Summit, guys. And thank you so much. We'll look forward for the lunch discussion. So I think the camera is here.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you. We're now going to lunch. It'll be just outside the door and just outside the convention area. To the left, you'll see an open-air garden, and the lunch is sponsored by Spaceti. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
See you back here at 1400. Thank you. Rodrigo. Thanks, Bal.